In President Trump's mind, there are two types of media. Outlets are either with him or against him. Fox is good, CNN is bad. Sinclair is good, NBC is bad. Jesse Waters is good, Jeff Bezos is bad. The New York Post, good. The Washington Post, bad. And this goes for other sources of information as well. Rasmussen polls are good. Other polls are bad. And even entertainment. Roseanne is really good. SNL is very bad. Trump wants his supporters to know the difference and watch accordingly. So how does this affect the bad outlets? Joining me now is Dean Baquet, the executive editor of the New York Times, which has not been caught failing by the president for about a week now.
He's turned his attention to the Post.
To the Washington Post. Yeah. But I wonder, Dean, what do you think is the cumulative effect of more than a year of these attacks?
It's bad. It hurts the media. I think the president missed the part of high school civics where the First Amendment was explained and where the role of a free and independent press was explained. And I think this is debilitating. I think that the press will keep doing what it does, but a president has two roles. One role, of course, is to pursue his agenda. The other role is to sort of build an understanding of the culture and to sort of create a culture. And if he creates a culture where Fox and Friends and Jesse Waters are regarded as serious journalism and the New York Times and the Washington Post are not, he will have done long-standing harmful effect on the country.
Is it out of control?
It's out of control. It's out of control, and his advisors should tell him to stop, because it's actually affecting the civic life and debate of the country. It started, when I first heard it, I thought, okay, a year ago, it felt like an exaggerated version of what we've heard from presidents forever. But it's out of control. First off, I will point out the Washington Post story today that was about disarray under John Kelly's leadership.
And it calls the president to call the paper fiction this morning.
That's right. Well, so far, every one of those deeply reported inside stories about the White House from the Times or the Post have all been verified. When Bannon talked about life inside the White House when he left the White House, he verified them. When Reince Priebus came out, he verified them. This stuff so far has all held up.
Yeah, the New York Times, the Post, CNN, the Journal all report this stuff.
That's right.
And it turns out to be true. But here's the thing about defending the Washington Post.
He loses credibility.
Usually you're their big rival, right? Normally people expect you to battle the Washington Post.
Yeah.
This is one of those areas where you find
we will fight to the death on daily stories. It's healthy for us. It's healthy for the country to have the two institutions fighting to the death. But we believe in the same principles, and I will defend them on these principles, and they will defend me on these principles.
A couple of days ago, the White House indicated the president won't go to the correspondents' dinner again this year. I know the Times has been avoiding the dinner for over a decade.
I pulled us out of the White House correspondents' dinner when I was the Washington bureau chief because I hated the image of journalists, editors, and powerful politicians seeming chummy. I don't think that's an image I like.
Most news outlets still go. Do you think it means anything that he's not going again this year?
No, not to me. I think that, to be frank, the White House Correspondents' Dinner ought to rethink their mission. They should not need for the president to come. If they want a way to raise scholarships for people, I get that. But the whole public spectacle of the President of the United States, whether it's Donald Trump or Barack Obama or George Bush, because I did this before Trump was president, is not a good image for us. Our image should be we have a tense and questioning relationship with government, not that we sip champagne with them on Saturday night.
One of the questions I was seeing on Twitter for you for this interview was about what it means to have the president criticizing the Times on a financial level.
Yeah.
I think we can put a couple of the stats up on screen about the Times 2017 earnings, over $1 billion in revenue, which I think is a number that might surprise some people. And you're at the point where you have over 2.5 million digital-only subscriptions. How much of that is the Trump effect?
Some of it is. We had one of our best years last year in a long time. Some of it is because I think some readers said, oh my God, the President of the United States is undermining the American press. We need to support them. That's part of it. Part of it is, by the way, it was not just Donald Trump. Some of it was our coverage of Harvey Weinstein, which we were first on. So it's not just Trump. But I think people understand right now that there is a need for an aggressive, independent press to cover a government that right now is in more turmoil than it's been in a generation.
Is it surprising to you that the turmoil hasn't, that we haven't seen more of a calming influence in the White House? It's been more than a year, and the president's still promoting conspiracy theories about voter fraud, for example. I think the conventional wisdom might have been, oh well, things will get a little calmer after a year.
I think we sometimes, the collective press, made the mistake. I mean, when Kelly was appointed, all of us made the mistake of saying, here's a guy who's going to calm things down. I think that's because we have this sort of narrative that White Houses go like that.
Yeah, right.
Well, this one's not.
Right.
and I don't think John Kelly's been able to calm it down, and I think this is going to be the next 4 to 8 years. Mm-hmm. This is going to be life in American politics.
Let me ask you about local journalism as well, because really interesting stories developing this weekend. Your reporter, Cindy Ember, is writing about it. It's this Denver Post editorial that we can put on screen, basically saying, please save our paper. The paper is speaking out against its owner, the hedge fund Alden Global Capital, saying the Post must be saved. Basically, the staff is fed up by years and years of cuts, 30 more layoffs happening now. What can newsrooms like the Times do to help local outlets?
First, the biggest crisis in journalism is not Donald Trump's attacks on the Washington Post and the New York Times. We're big, we can stand it, we can even thrive, and it can even inspire us. The biggest crisis is the decline of local newspapers. We just did a long project with the New Orleans Times-Picayune, where I worked, which was a way for us. It was about coastal erosion. We learned from them, they learned from us. I'd like to do a lot more of those. But I think calling attention to the problem is the main thing we could do. That was a newsroom. This is a major city, Denver. That's a newsroom that now is on the verge of having fewer than 100 journalists. That's astounding. The newspapers I started at in New Orleans, the afternoon newspaper, had more than that. That is unbelievable. That means things won't be covered. School boards aren't being covered. This is a crisis in American journalism. And I think everyone assumed that the digital age would bring in new competitors who would pick up the slack. That has not happened.
And from local to international journalism, there's word this weekend of a Palestinian journalist being shot and killed in Gaza. 6 other journalists injured there, according to the Palestinians. Now, the Israelis say the people were warned not to get too close to the border. There's been these ongoing protests. But what does it mean for you to see a kind of ongoing death and injury toll among journalists all around the world? You know, the Committee to Protect Journalists finds it's a much more dangerous world for journalists than it was a decade ago.
It's two things. First, it's scary. I mean, I have journalists who work for the New York Times who are in harm's way in the Middle East and elsewhere. On the other hand, I hope people see it as a reminder of what we do. I hope people see it as a reminder of how powerful our mission is, the risks we take. I hope the president, to be frank, the next time he's about to send out a tweet that criticizes the press, I hope he pauses and looks at the courage of the journalists all over the world who work for my institution and others, and understands that what we do is really important and vital and helps the world understand the world.
Dean, great to see you. Thank you for being here.
Good to see you.
Please come back soon.
Thank you.